My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 28 years old, and 3 days before my wedding. I walked into my apartment and found my fiancé naked in bed with my younger sister. But I didn't cancel the wedding. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't even cry. I just stood there, hands still on the doorknob, watching their limbs tangle in panic. And in that strange, breathless moment when my world should have shattered, I felt something colder, sharper, and far more dangerous than heartbreak. Clarity. "Oh," I said, voice calm as church glass. "Well, that explains everything." Jake scrambled for the sheet. Maya rolled her eyes like I'd walked in on her trying on my lip gloss, not my entire life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you how I turned their betrayal into the most satisfying moment of public humiliation you've ever seen, hit like if you've ever been blindsided by the people closest to you, and subscribe if you believe betrayal doesn't deserve silence. Because this one's not about heartbreak. It's about reclaiming your goddamn spotlight. Growing up, people always said Maya had something about her. That shine. That effortless way of catching light, catching attention, catching everything I never could. Even her name sounded like a shimmer, Maya. To my parents, she wasn't just a daughter. She was a work of art, an event. She had our mother's movie star smile, our father's charm-in-a-suit confidence, and the uncanny ability to turn any mistake into an anecdote people applauded. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one. Quiet, observant, excellent at school, average at being noticed. I didn't resent her glow, not at first. I just assumed mine would come later. That if I worked hard enough, loved big enough, was good enough, someone would finally look at me and see me. Spoiler alert, that's not how it works in families like ours. I remember being 16 and working my first job at a rundown gelato stand in the mall. It paid minimum wage and smelled like sour milk. But I stuck with it all summer just to buy one thing, my dream prom dress. Midnight blue, floor-length satin. It shimmered when it moved. I tried it on a dozen times before I finally brought it home, clutching the plastic garment bag like it was sacred. I made the mistake of showing it to Maya. She traced the fabric with one finger and said, "It's beautiful, Claire. You're gonna look amazing." That's the thing about Maya. Her lies always came gift-wrapped in sweetness. 2 weeks before prom, the boy I'd been crushing on for months, Sam. Sweet, nervous Sam asked Maya to go with him. I found out at lunch, when she flashed the text around like it was a lottery ticket. And then, on prom night, she walked out of her room, wearing my dress. No apology, no hesitation. Just a lazy smile as she adjusted the strap in front of her mirror and said, "He likes me more. Not my fault." I stood there in my sweats, heart trying to claw its way up my throat, and watched her walk out with everything I'd saved for. When I finally told my mom what happened, mascara streaking down my face, she barely looked up from her magazine. "Oh, Claire, it's just a dress. Don't be selfish." That sentence, it lived in me. It fossilized. And every time Maya stole something attention, affection, people I heard those 4 words like a gavel. Don't be selfish. The pattern only got worse as we got older. At 22, I fell hard for Ben, my first grown-up relationship. He was kind, thoughtful, made jokes that made my ribs hurt from laughing. We made plans, talked about living together. I even delayed my graduation to spend the summer with him before studying abroad. We kissed goodbye at the airport, promised weekly Skype calls. He whispered, "I'll miss you every second." 3 months later, I flew home a week early to surprise him. I used my key. I bought his favorite coffee. I wanted it to be a rom-com moment. Instead, Maya answered the door. In his t-shirt, with my mug in her hand, behind her. The apartment smelled like her perfume, the one my mom used to wear when she wanted attention. She didn't flinch. "It just sort of happened," she said, refusing to meet my eyes. "You shouldn't have left if you didn't want someone else to make him feel special." That night, I sat on Derek's front porch in the rain. Derek was my cousin, tech genius, family disappointment, and the only person in our orbit who didn't think Maya walked on water. He handed me a towel and a glass of whiskey, and for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't crazy. He never said "I told you so." Just sat beside me and let me scream into the wind. The breaking point didn't come with screaming, it came with ink. One weekend, Maya left her diary open on her desk. Big mistake. Inside was a list of goals, and every single one was mine. Summer internship at Walker Gallery, Claire's top pick. Ben, vulnerable after her Spain trip. Grandma's pearls. Claire thinks she's getting them. Lead in Little Women. Claire's been practicing for weeks. It wasn't just envy, it was a strategy. I showed it to my dad. He read it, paused, then looked at me with that look I'd come to dread. "Disappointment. Claire," he said quietly, "your jealousy is going to make you a very lonely woman." And then he burned the diary, said it was cleansing the house of negativity. But Derek had already scanned it. "Keep it," he told me one day. "You'll need it, and when that day comes, we'll hit back hard." At the time, I thought he meant metaphorically. I didn't realize he was dead serious. But not everything Maya wanted, she got. When I met Jake Patterson, tattooed, passionate, dreamer. Jake, he looked at Maya like she was background noise. When we went to Christmas dinner and she started one of her "oops, I'm adorable" stories. Jake leaned over and whispered, "She's exhausting." I nearly cried. I thought, this is it. This one's mine. I was wrong. Dead wrong. 3 days before the wedding, I came home early for my final dress fitting. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. And then I heard it. The laugh. Her laugh. And his voice. And when I pushed open the bedroom door, I saw them. Entwined. My ring on her finger. My favorite robe on the floor. Maya smirked. Jake went pale. Claire. But I didn't let him finish. I just smiled. "Thank you," I said, "for giving me exactly what I needed. When I was a kid, I used to stare at Maya and wonder what it felt like to be wanted without trying, to be the default choice in every room. For most of my life, I assumed she had some invisible magic I lacked. But the moment I saw her with Jake, I stopped believing in magic. What she had wasn't sparkle. It was strategy. And the worst part, no one ever called her out for it. Not my mother, who once told me Maya just shines a little brighter. Not my father, who said, "That's just how sisters are." Not even Jake, who swore he loved me and still let her into our bed. I left that apartment without slamming the door. I walked down the hall like a woman who wasn't about to shatter. I got in my car, parked under the yellow flickering garage light, and stared at my own reflection in the windshield. My hands were cold, my chest tight, but my mind crystal clear. You can fall apart later, I told myself. Right now, you plan. Because the wedding was still on. 200 guests. My dress steamed and pressed. My grandmother's necklace already boxed. A rented manor house in Lake Forest, waiting to host what everyone expected to be a perfect love story. So, that's exactly what I gave them. Just not the story they were expecting. I drove straight to Derek's loft. He opened the door in sweats, a gaming headset slung around his neck, and one look at my face made him sit up straight. "Tell me it's time." "It's time." He didn't ask questions, just pointed to the couch, handed me a glass of ginger beer, and booted up his server like we were about to rob a digital vault. Which, honestly, we kind of were. Jake was tech savvy. Sure. But Derek was paranoid brilliant. The kind of guy who used VPN layers and ran silent backups of everything just in case. "You still have that footage from your smart home system?" he asked. "I never deleted the archives." Jake said it was all stored in the cloud. Derek nodded. "Perfect. Let's see what he gave us." An hour later, we had a highlight reel, Maya sneaking into our apartment during my nursing shifts. Jake telling her how easy Claire is to manipulate. Her laughing while holding the ring I bought with my inheritance. The same ring that was now sitting on my dresser, humming with meaning. I stared at the screen, numb. It wasn't the sex that broke me. It was the way they laughed. Like I was nothing but a footnote in my own life.
Wow.
I slept on Derek's couch that night, fully clothed, too wired to cry. At 4:12 a.m., I sat up and whispered, "I'm not canceling it." "Good." Derek replied without turning from the screen, "But we're upgrading it." We spent the next 2 days prepping like it was a covert op. Derek programmed QR codes onto the back of each guest's name card. When scanned, they'd take people to a private link, the video, the truth. We designed the site like a wedding album, elegant cover, soft music, a slideshow that started with Jake and I holding hands and ended with Maya in his bed. All time-stamped, all irrefutable. I wrote a speech, practiced it in the mirror until the mirror didn't flinch back at me anymore. I booked a last-minute makeup artist and told her I wanted serene goddess, not scorned bride. I ironed my dress. I polished the necklace my grandmother had left me, the one Maya had tried to claim in her diary. And when I zipped the garment bag shut the night before the wedding, I felt something shift. Not anger, not sadness. Power. The kind that comes from knowing you've stopped begging for someone to save you. "You're the storm now." The morning of the wedding, my mom walked into the bridal suite with mimosas and tension. "You look lovely," she said, though her eyes did a full-body scan of judgment. "Thanks, Mom. Are you sure you're ready for this, Jake's? A big leap?" I sipped my orange juice and smiled. "I'm not afraid of leaps anymore." She nodded, oblivious. Maya arrived 10 minutes later in a champagne bridesmaid gown that cost more than my rent. Her hair was perfect. Her tone fake sweet. "You look beautiful, Claire. I'm so happy for you." She kissed my cheek like a cobra, and for the first time in 20 years, I didn't shrink. "Thank you, Maya," I replied, locking eyes with her. "I've been waiting for this day my whole life." She didn't catch the edge in my voice. Jake didn't either, when he saw me walking down the aisle. His smile twitched. Guilt, regret, arrogance. Didn't matter, because he still said I'd do like he meant it. And I let him. The reception was held in the Manor's ballroom. All twinkle lights and white florals and too many people taking selfies. I greeted guests, posed for photos, and toasted with relatives I hadn't seen since puberty. I waited. Patient, composed. Until the toasts. That's when I stepped up to the mic. The room hushed. Cameras lifted. Jake stood beside me, beaming like a man who'd won the lottery. "Thank you all for being here," I began. "Really, this day means everything to me." Pause. Let it breathe. Weddings are about truth, about choosing love in the face of uncertainty. And today, I want to honor that truth by sharing something with you all. People leaned in. If you'll take a moment to scan the QR codes on your name cards, you'll see the full story behind this union. It's important, because love is honest. And then I stepped back. Phones flashed. Screens lit up. And within 10 seconds, the silence was replaced with stunned gasps, muffled shrieks, a wine glass shattering somewhere near the dessert table. Jake turned to me, his face pale. "Claire, what the hell is this?" It's our wedding gift, I said, from me to you. Maya rushed the mic, shrieking that it was fake, deep-faked, manipulated. But Derek had embedded timestamps, device data, GPS, receipts, literal and digital. And just like that, my silence, my compliance, my years of stepping aside, all of it ended, right there, in satin heels and flawless eyeliner. As I watched the lies catch fire, the ballroom turned into a war zone within minutes. Aunt Lydia's jaw was on the floor, frozen mid-bite of red velvet cake. Uncle Carl nearly choked on his champagne. The DJ, poor kid, just stared at the laptop like he'd accidentally hit self-destruct instead of play next. Jake stood completely still, his hands open, eyes darting from phone to guest to me. Claire, this isn't funny. I didn't answer, because it wasn't supposed to be. Maya shoved past two waiters, her curls bouncing like she was in the middle of some bad reality show breakdown. You psycho! You humiliated me! This is illegal! I raised one eyebrow. You sure you want to bring legality into this, Maya? 'Cause I've got timestamps, IPs, and a full copy of your little goal list from junior year. Remember that? She went pale. Jake turned to her. What list? Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. And suddenly, you could feel it that exact moment when Jake realized he hadn't just slept with my sister. He'd walked straight into a web spun by someone far more dangerous than me. You know what no one tells you about revenge? It's not loud. It's not fireworks and screaming. It's quiet. It's in the way people stop making eye contact with the villain, the way whispers multiply like wildfire, the way your parents who always believed you were too dramatic start looking at you like maybe they were wrong. And my parents, they didn't know where to look. Mom clutched her pearls like we were at a church revival. Dad tried to play the neutral patriarch, but his face was bright red, and his hand kept clenching into a fist every time someone whispered Jesus. Wasn't that her sister? And me. I just stood there, calm, centered, like the eye of the storm. Because for once, I wasn't the one apologizing for someone else's behavior. After the dust started to settle, and half the guests had already left out of pure secondhand embarrassment, Jake followed me into the side hallway near the coat check. His breath was shallow, his hair messy, and, for the first time since I met him, his charisma had cracked. Claire, please, just tell me why. I turned slowly, letting the silence grow so big it started to echo. Why what? Why I didn't just walk away quietly. Why I didn't let you two run off into the sunset on my dime. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I kept going. You know what I learned from dating you, Jake? That being decent is exhausting. That love, when it's only given to the easy version of me, isn't love, it's leverage. You never saw me, not really. You saw an investment. And Maya, she saw a trophy. He flinched. I loved you. No, Jake. You loved the way I believed in you. You loved the bank account, the late-night pep talks, the calm when your panic attacks hit. You didn't love me. You loved being helped. He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. You sold the ring, didn't you? He froze. What? The original one. The one I helped you pay for. You pawned it and bought a cheaper copy. Derek found the receipt. His face cracked wide open. And that's when I realized it had never occurred to him I'd actually dig deep, that I'd investigate, that I'd fight. They never expect the quiet girl to go nuclear. Outside, Maya was sobbing in front of someone's baby stroller while trying to explain away the footage. It's not what it looks like. Okay, Claire edited it. She's vindictive. She always had a problem with me. She's been obsessed with ruining me. Someone muttered, then why are the dates all different? And she spun like a tornado. She spotted my mom and marched over, arms waving. "Aren't you going to do something? Tell her to stop." My mother, to my complete shock, didn't rush to her side. She just stood there, stiff, gripping her clutch so hard the veins in her hand popped. "You told me you loved your sister." "I do," Maya cried, "but she's always been jealous." "Jealous doesn't come with video evidence." And just like that, Maya's last line of defense evaporated. My mother turned away. My father didn't say a word. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at Derek's, wrapped in a hoodie and silence. We ate microwave mac and cheese and watched reruns of Shark Tank like we hadn't just burned my entire life to the ground. "How do you feel?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. Not free. Not victorious. Just empty. I don't know who I am without people walking all over me. I admitted. Derek handed me another soda. "Then maybe now's your chance to find out." The fallout didn't take long. Jake's restaurant investors pulled out within days. One of them emailed me personally to say, "Thanks for the warning, dodged a bullet." Maya tried to spin the whole thing as a toxic family meltdown and posted a crying apology video on her Instagram. It bombed. Her followers dropped by 30% in a week. She turned off comments on every platform. Then there was the quiet. No calls from my parents. No messages. And maybe that hurt the most. But it also confirmed what I already knew. I had been auditioning for their approval my entire life. And the role was never mine to win. I sold the dress, donated the venue refund to a domestic abuse shelter, and I started over. Got my nursing license, moved to a city where no one knew the Bennett sisters. Laughed again, dated, slowly, carefully. Nothing serious. But I kept Grandma's necklace. Not because it was fancy or valuable, but because Maya once tried to take it from me and I'd finally learned how to keep what was mine. You'd think that after detonating a wedding, humiliating a cheating fiancé, and exposing your golden child sister in front of 200 people, life would settle down. But no one warns you about what happens after the storm clears. When the adrenaline fades, when the spotlight turns off, when the silence sets in. The thing is, silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes, it's just the calm before the next wave. 2 months after the wedding, that wasn't. I was living in a tiny studio apartment above a dry cleaner in Evanston. The place always smelled like starch and old cotton. But it was mine. No roommates. No secrets. No Maya. I was working night shifts at St. Jude's Medical Center. Long hours, bad coffee, fluorescent lights that turned everyone the color of sadness. It was hard, but it was honest. For once, I didn't have to fake anything. I'd show up, help real people, clock out, breathe. Most days, I felt like I was rebuilding myself brick by brick. A slow, clumsy renovation of a woman who'd spent most of her life being an accessory in someone else's spotlight. But then the letters started showing up. At first, I thought it was junk mail, just another catalog or political flyer. But this envelope was plain. No return address, just my name, written in blocky, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside a single sentence, "You really think this is over?" I didn't flinch. I'd seen Maya's tantrums before, messy, dramatic, usually short-lived. So I tossed it in the trash. But a week later, another envelope appeared. "You ruined everything. Let's see how long your little freedom lasts." No signature. No postage stamp. Someone had dropped it off by hand. I checked the building's security footage. Derek helped me dig through the feed. There, at 3:13 a.m., a figure in a hoodie, slipping the letter through the door slot and vanishing into the alley. The height, the posture, the way they walked. It wasn't Maya. It was Jake. Now, you might be thinking, why not report it? file a police report, get a restraining order. I considered it. I even called a lawyer friend who said, "Claire, this is textbook stalking behavior." But something in me hesitated. Not because I wasn't afraid. Because I knew Jake and I knew fear was his oxygen. I wasn't going to hand him a gas tank. Instead, I made a plan. I started documenting everything: screenshots, timestamps, notes. I even got one of those tiny voice recorders nurses use for charting and kept it on me 24/7. Derek installed a second set of cameras, ones only I had access to. I didn't tell anyone else, not my coworkers, not even my therapist, because something told me this wasn't just petty revenge. It was desperation. And desperate people don't think straight. A week later, while grabbing a late-night sandwich at a 24-hour diner near the hospital, I saw him, sitting 2 booths behind me, ball cap, hoodie, pretending to read a menu he never touched. I didn't panic. I paid my bill, walked out slowly, didn't look back. But as soon as I turned the corner, I pulled out my phone and called Derek. "It's escalating." "I'll track him," he said. "You know I can." That's what I love about Derek. He doesn't freak out. He doesn't play devil's advocate. He just gets to work. The next day, I woke up to a voicemail from Maya. Her voice was tight, brittle, like glass about to crack. "Claire, we need to talk. I think Jake's losing it." That got my attention. I hadn't spoken to her since the wedding. I debated deleting the message, but something in her tone, genuine fear, maybe made me call back. She picked up on the first ring. "He came to my apartment," she said, "drunk, angry, said I tricked him, said you turned everyone against him." "Didn't you?" I asked. Flat. Silence. "Look, I know you hate me." "Correct. But he's unhinged. He thinks this is your fault, and now he thinks we both set him up." I laughed once, low and humorless. "And that bothers you because—" "Because I saw something in his car, Claire." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A gun, in the glove box." My stomach turned to ice. This wasn't just stalking. This wasn't just some bitter ex acting out. This was danger. And somehow, Maya, the girl who once wore my prom dress like a crown, was just as scared as I was. For the first time in our lives, we were on the same side of something, even if that something was survival. Derek didn't need convincing. He'd already built a map of Jake's movements based on security pings from my apartment and social media geotags. He showed me the screen. Jake had been trailing me for weeks. Same coffee shops, same late-night walks, same hospital parking deck. "He's not just angry," Derek said. "He's circling." I gripped the edge of the table. "So what do we do?" "We finish this." He opened a folder labeled Final Strike. Inside were screenshots, old texts, the pawn shop receipt for the engagement ring, even voice memos Jake left on Maya's phone when he thought no one was listening. We had everything. Evidence, motive, a story. "You sure you want to go public again?" Derek asked. "One video was enough to wreck your wedding. This one could wreck his life." I looked at the screen, at the face of the man who once promised to love me forever. Then I thought about the letters, the diner, the gun. He already wrecked it. Then let's flip the switch. If the wedding takedown was a symphony, what we planned next was a surgical strike. This wasn't about spectacle. It was about precision, clean cuts, controlled exposure. Because Jake hadn't just broken my heart, he had crossed into something darker. And I wasn't going to wait for him to snap. I was going to get ahead of it. Derek and I had one rule for what we were about to do: no gray areas. Everything had to be true, documented, timed, unquestionable. Because if we were going to bring down Jake Patterson publicly again, we wouldn't survive a second round of doubt. Especially not now that he was armed. It started with the ring. I walked into the pawn shop myself, wearing scrubs, hair in a messy bun, looking as average and harmless as possible. I asked to see the vintage ring in the case. The same setting, same scratches on the band, same tiny chip under the diamond he thought I'd never notice. "How long's this one been here?" I asked casually. "Couple months," the clerk said. "Guy came in sweating bullets, said he needed cash fast." I smiled, nodded, then asked for a receipt copy in case I came back. While he walked away, I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. Got it. Next was the emails. Derek found them in the archive, old correspondence between Jake and his investors. The tone was all bravado. "Claire's got money coming in. I've got her eating out of my hand. Just a few more months and we'll expand." Like I was a business loan in a dress. We packaged them into a neat file, time-stamped, verified metadata. Then came the voice messages, Jake leaving rambling, slurred threats on Maya's phone. "You told me she wouldn't find out. You said you'd handle it. If I go down, I'm not going alone." Maya sent them to me without fanfare. No apology, just a cold little text. "Use them however you want." Even she knew she'd lost control of him. The final touch. The security footage. Derek pulled the diner tape from that night Jake followed me. He enhanced the image, highlighted the timestamps, and clipped a clear frame of Jake staring directly at me through the reflection in the window. Predator behavior. Undeniable. And now, we just had to choose the delivery method. Posting it online would be the easy route. But easy wasn't enough. Jake had always relied on shadows working behind charm, behind plausible deniability, behind people like me keeping quiet to avoid drama. So we did the exact opposite. We invited the drama in. There's a live streaming nurse channel I sometimes watch, Night Shift Confessions, a mix of funny ER stories, hospital hacks, and the occasional PSA about safety. They have 400K followers. I emailed the host, using my real name. Subject line: "I have a story your viewers need to hear. It might save someone's life." Attached a short reel Derek and I cut together. Just 90 seconds. Enough to grab attention, not overwhelm. The host, Jules, responded within an hour. "Holy crap, is this real?" Every second. "You want to go live?" "Yes, but I want full control, one-time stream. Then it disappears." She agreed. We set it for Friday, 8 p.m. prime scroll time. That Friday, I sat down in front of my laptop wearing my hospital badge and the soft gray hoodie I'd practically lived in since everything went down. Jules introduced me. I introduced myself. "My name is Claire Bennett. I'm a nurse, a daughter. And until recently, I was engaged to someone who manipulated me, stalked me, and weaponized my silence." The comments exploded. "Is this the wedding girl? I remember that video. Wait, this guy's dangerous." I told the whole story, not just the juicy parts, but the quiet parts, the ignored red flags, the way we're trained, especially as women, to downplay discomfort, to explain away gut instincts because we don't want to seem crazy. I showed the receipts, the ring, the emails, the diner footage, the audio clips. No melodrama, just facts. And then I said something I hadn't planned to say. If you're watching this, and you feel like you're constantly explaining your pain to people who love you, stop. The right people won't need convincing. Jules ended the stream with a number for the National Stalking Hotline. And just like that, it was done. Or so I thought. The fallout was faster than expected. Jake's name started trending locally. Former restaurant staff came forward, claiming unpaid wages, aggressive outbursts, even inappropriate texts. Maya deleted her socials entirely. And then the police showed up at my work. Not to arrest me, to inform me that Jake had been detained outside Maya's building with the gun, loaded, unregistered. Apparently, she called it in this time. And for once, someone listened to her. I went home that night and stood in the middle of my studio. It smelled like detergent and lemon-scented floor wipes. Safe. Quiet. I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine and looked at my phone. A message from my dad. I was wrong. No elaboration. Just those 3 words. But for once, it was enough. Oh. I was washing dishes when the knock came. Firm, rhythmic, familiar. I wiped my hands, heart thudding low in my chest. Opened the door. And there stood Maya. Mascara-free, hair pulled back, face bare. She looked human. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. "Depends," I said. "Is this the start of another performance?" She shook her head. "No, I think I finally understand the role I played." She stepped inside, glanced around. "This is cozy." "It's mine." She nodded. "I want to say sorry, but not the way I usually do. Not the kind that makes it about me." "Good," I said, folding my arms, because I'm not interested in fixing us. She hesitated. "But would you help me fix myself? Because even when you win the war, some ghosts don't vanish. They just change their names." Maya sat across from me at the kitchen counter, cradling a mug of tea like it was a lifeline. She hadn't touched the biscotti I offered. She just stared into the steam. Quiet. That was already a shift, Maya. Silent. Not spinning a story. Not dominating the airspace. Just breathing. "You were always the strong one," she said finally. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so backwards. "You really believe that I asked?" She looked up. Her eyes didn't flinch. "I envied how you handled pain, how you stayed kind. I could fake charm, but I couldn't sustain kindness." That was the first time Maya admitted she wasn't proud of herself. And weirdly, that hurt more than anything she'd done. Because I realized we were both raised in the same house, but we grew up in different realities. I was taught to disappear. She was taught to dominate. Neither of us knew how to just be. Jake pled not guilty. His lawyer argued the gun wasn't loaded, the stalking wasn't credible, and that he was emotionally manipulated by 2 sisters playing psychological games. You should have seen the prosecutor's face when they said that. They had texts, footage, Maya's statement, my video testimony. In court, he looked small. Not the confident entrepreneur who once pitched big dreams in front of our families. Just a scared man who realized too late that charming your way through life only works when people still trust you. And no one in that courtroom did. Not even his parents, who sat behind the glass partition like they barely recognized him. He got 18 months for the weapons charge and a no-contact order for both me and Maya. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to breathe again without checking over my shoulder. Enough to sleep through the night without the sound of footsteps echoing in my brain. After the sentencing, I went back to work. Same hospital. Same grind. But something had shifted. Nurses started asking to be on my shift. Residents treated me with more respect. Patients, even the cranky ones, asked me to sit with them longer. I didn't talk about what happened. But somehow, everyone knew. Maybe it was the way I walked, or the way I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I was no longer the girl who settled. I was the woman who chose. Maya and I didn't become best friends overnight. She still had her sharp edges. I still had my limits. But we talked. We unpacked. We fought, sometimes. And for once, the fighting wasn't about competition, it was about truth. She started therapy. She stopped chasing social media fame and applied for a job at a nonprofit that helped teen girls navigate toxic family dynamics. I thought they'd laugh me out of the interview, She told me. What happened? They asked if I knew what it felt like to be both the villain and the victim. She got the job. One Sunday afternoon, while sorting laundry, I found Grandma's necklace again. Still tucked in the same velvet pouch, still shining. I held it up to the light and noticed something I hadn't seen before, a tiny engraving on the inside of the clasp. CB, keep what's yours. I stared at it for a long time. I'd thought keeping what's mine meant revenge, or power, or proving a point. But maybe it just meant keeping myself, my voice, my dignity, my sanity. 3 weeks later, Derek showed up with a gift. Wrapped in brown paper, tied with a ribbon. Inside was a framed photo of me from the live stream, my face mid-sentence, hand raised, eyes steady. At the bottom, he'd printed a caption, "Not the quiet one anymore." I didn't cry. I laughed, a full, ugly, cathartic laugh. "You're ridiculous," I told him. "I'm right, though," he said. "You scared the internet straight." Just one man. Sometimes, that's all it takes. Meh. But of course, nothing stays still forever. A few months later, I received a letter. No return address. Different handwriting. Inside a single photo. A snapshot of Jake, standing outside a halfway house, looking straight at the camera. On the back, in black ink, "I'm coming out better. Hope you're ready." I stared at the photo for what felt like an hour. Jake, same face, same smirk, like nothing had touched him. Like the court. The time served. The exposure had just bounced off. And then the line on the back. "I'm coming out better. Hope you're ready." What was it, an apology, a threat, a dare? Or maybe, worst of all, a reminder that no matter how far I'd come, the past could still knock, uninvited, on my doorstep. But here's the difference now. I don't flinch anymore. I sat with the letter, lit a lavender candle, made tea, and let myself feel it all: rage, fear, disgust, the ghost of old love. Then I slipped the photo into a file I now kept labeled Boundaries. Yes, a literal file. Inside were printed copies of the police report, my restraining order, my live stream transcript, and a notarized document giving Derek temporary power of attorney if anything ever happened to me. Some people call that paranoid. I call it preparation. Because when you've walked through hell once, you don't pretend the matches no longer exist. You just stop giving them to arsonists. Jake never contacted me again. Maybe he sensed he didn't have power here anymore. Maybe he found someone else to play savior with. Maybe he did actually get better. I'm not holding my breath. Healing doesn't require forgetting. Sometimes, it requires remembering on purpose. So you don't repeat the pattern. So you don't hand over the scissors to the same person who cut you open. Life moved forward, quietly, steadily. Maya stayed in therapy. She built real friendships, not just curated social circles. Every now and then, she'd call not to trauma dump or gossip, but to check in, ask how I was sleeping, ask if I wanted to join her for a grief support fundraiser she helped organize. I said yes. We didn't wear matching dresses, but we wore the same shade of red lipstick, a small, silent symbol, not of perfection, but of effort. Derek and I never became a couple, not like people expected. He met someone, a software engineer named Maria, who was obsessed with gardening and had the driest wit I'd ever seen. They were good together, and I was okay with that. Because not every man who helps you heal is your next chapter. Some are just bridges. And bridges aren't meant to be permanent homes. They're meant to carry you somewhere safer. I eventually moved. Got a job in a smaller hospital in Oregon. Started hiking on weekends. Volunteered at a local women's shelter. Took up pottery. even though I was terrible at it. I kept Grandma's necklace, of course. Wore it on hard days. Because that tiny inscription, "Keep what's yours," wasn't just a family relic anymore. It was a manifesto. A choice. To keep my voice. My peace. Myself. Sometimes I still get DMs from strangers. "You're that girl." Right from the live stream. "You inspired me to leave my boyfriend. How did you stay so calm?" The last one always makes me smile. Because I wasn't calm. I was terrified. But I was clear. And clarity will carry you through storms that courage alone can't. I don't need revenge anymore. Because the ultimate revenge is surviving well, flourishing in the same world that tried to break you. Waking up without dread, going to sleep without bargaining, looking in the mirror and seeing someone you fought to become, not someone you tolerated. And here's the wildest twist of all. I'm grateful. Not to Jake, not to Maya, but to the version of me who didn't back down, who pressed record, who hit send, who stood at the altar of her own undoing and said, "Not today." So if you're watching this, and you're somewhere in the middle, still questioning your gut, still hoping someone changes, still clinging to the version of the story where you're the problem, let me tell you something I wish someone had said to me. You are not too much. You are not too broken. You do not need to shrink to be loved. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to keep what's yours. Thank you for watching. If this story meant something to you, share it, comment below, or just send it to the friend who needs to hear it most. Because stories like this, they're not rare. They're just usually hidden. And it's time we stopped hiding. Story 2. My name is Jessica Miller. I'm 32, a family court judge in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and 5 minutes into my little sister's engagement dinner, I knew I'd made a mistake by showing up. Not because I didn't want to be happy for her, not even because she'd chosen the kind of extravagant garden party that screamed, "Look at me with every imported orchid and champagne flute." No. It was the way she greeted me that made my stomach knot the moment I stepped onto our parents' back patio. Jessica Rachel called, her voice lilting with fake excitement. "You made it. I told Marcus you'd probably come alone. But you always surprise us." She pulled me into one of those one-armed hugs that feels more like a shoulder check than affection. Her perfume was sharp, overpriced, and intentional. The kind that lingered longer than the hug itself. I smiled, because that's what I was trained to do. Years of courtroom composure taught me how to smile through things that hurt. Through custody battles, allegations of abuse, sobbing mothers begging me not to terminate parental rights. A little family shade, I could handle it. "Of course I came," I said, handing her the gift. I'd carefully wrapped a set of custom-etched wine glasses with her and Marcus's initials. "Wouldn't miss it." "Oh, how thoughtful," she said, handing the box off to some poor cousin like it was a grocery bag. "Go mingle. You remember where the bar is, right?" I did. The bar was where I usually retreated during these things: weddings, holidays, birthdays, any gathering that turned into a spotlight for Rachel and a shadow for me. You see, I was the rule follower, the overachiever, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the praise. Rachel. She was the sparkler, the firecracker, the Instagram-filtered fantasy child. My parents adored her chaotic energy, her dramatic stories, her failed startups, her yoga retreat in Tulum that turned into a GoFundMe plea. They called it finding herself. I called it another mess for someone else to clean up. Usually me. Marcus found me near the drinks table, sipping Sauvignon Blanc and trying to stay out of sight. He wore a classic navy suit, hair perfectly groomed, that prosecutor charm thing going strong. He looked more like a senator than someone engaged to my sister. "Jessica, he said warmly. "I'm really glad you're here." I smiled for real this time. I liked Marcus. I'd worked opposite him in court once. He was sharp, measured, respectful, nothing like the trail of chaos Rachel usually dated. "You must be a glutton for punishment," I joked, tipping my glass in the direction of Rachel, who was laughing too loudly with her college roommates. He laughed. "Let's just say, I admire women who know what they want, even if it's everything, all at once." I tilted my head. "And do you know everything about what she wants?" That pause, just a fraction of a second too long, was the first crack in the evening. Dinner was held beneath a massive white tent. String lights glowed above like stars someone had tried to arrange just for Rachel. I was seated directly across from the happy couple strategically, I suspected, so I could see everything, and everyone could see me. The first toast came from my mother. "To Rachel, our shining star," she said, holding up her glass. "You've always lived on your own terms, and now you've found someone strong enough to keep up." Everyone laughed. I sipped my wine. Marcus turned to me mid-meal and asked, kindly, "How's work been? Still in family court?" Before I could answer, Rachel cut in. "Oh, you know Jessica," she said. "Spearing a scallop, she judges families because she doesn't have one of her own." A few chuckles, a few heads turned away. I breathed, in, out. Years of legal training and therapy taught me how to not react, how to let things roll off. But the warmth in my chest wasn't wine anymore. It was fury, sad, bitter fury. "Actually," I said calmly, "I help protect children who are caught between adults too selfish to care for them." "Ouch," Rachel said, feigning offense. "Someone sensitive tonight." My father, sitting next to her, chuckled under his breath. "She's just tired. Jessica works too hard. You need to relax. Honey." That word honey burned more than it soothed. Rachel clinked her spoon against her glass. "Anyway, while we're all here, I thought we could share fun stories. How about this? Everyone tells the worst date they've ever had." I shook my head slightly. I knew what was coming. "Jessica," she called out, "remember that guy who ghosted you after 2 dates because he said you talked like a textbook?" A few laughs, a few uncomfortable glances. "That was over a year ago," I said, "and we actually stayed friends." "Oh, I'm sure," Rachel smirked. "You're always so emotionally resilient." That word again, but this time it wasn't from her lips. It echoed from a memory's sterile white walls. IVs. A doctor's voice telling me, "You're lucky you survived, but you may not be able to carry children after this." She knew. Rachel knew that truth. She knew that 5 years ago. I'd rushed to the hospital after her daughter fell sick under my care, while she was partying in the Hamptons. She knew the infection I caught during that emergency nearly cost me my life and did cost me my future as a mother. She knew, and she still sat there, mocking me. That's when Marcus stood up. Napkin folded slowly, movements precise. His face, usually so composed, shifted. Something flickered behind his eyes. "Enough," he said. Everyone froze. "You want games, Rachel? Let's play one. Jessica's a judge. Let's have her tell the truth for once. Let's all hear what really happened 5 years ago." The room fell silent. Rachel's face went sheet white. "Marcus, sit down." He didn't. He looked straight at me, not unkindly, not accusingly, but like a man who'd found a thread and pulled. "You're the judge here tonight. Jessica, but who were you 5 years ago?" My mouth went dry, hands cold. I looked around my parents, frozen. Guests, confused. Rachel, trembling now, eyes darting. And Marcus, steady, waiting. I opened my mouth to speak, then shut it again. Because how do you explain a secret that cost you your womb, your peace, your entire sense of self, without sounding like you're putting your sister on trial. But maybe that was the point. Maybe this was a trial. To understand what happened that night, why Marcus stood up and shattered the illusion, you need to know how I became the kind of woman who sits at a dinner table, holding back decades of pain behind a perfectly folded napkin. You need to meet the girl who grew up in a house where silence was survival, and praise was a currency only Rachel could spend. Rachel and I were 2 years apart, but the gap always felt wider. Not because of age, but because of how the world treated us. I was the quiet one, the one who lined up her pencils by color, brought home perfect report cards, and helped Mom with the dishes before being asked. Rachel, she was glitter in human form, loud, magnetic, messily enchanting. She left chaos in her wake, and everyone called it charm. When she failed a class, it was because the teacher was uninspired. When I got an A-, I was slipping and needed to push harder. That double standard. It wasn't subtle. It was built into every word, every gesture, every family dinner where my successes were polite footnotes, and her impulsive choices were celebrated as adventurous. Our parents weren't villains. They were just emotionally blind. My dad, David Miller, was a retired corporate attorney, smart, rigid, obsessed with appearances. My mom, Susan, was a former high school teacher with an eye for passive aggression disguised as compliments. They meant well, I think, but they worshipped Rachel's spirit and treated my discipline like a burden. "She's just trying to find herself," Mom would say. When Rachel blew through another internship or changed majors for the 4th time. Meanwhile, I was too serious, too harsh, too by the book. After high school, I went to Yale on a scholarship. I worked 2 jobs to cover what the scholarship didn't. I lived off granola bars and public library Wi-Fi. Rachel. She took a year off to see the world, which apparently meant partying across Europe while posting curated sunrise selfies from Croatia. All funded, of course, by the same parents who told me they were saving for emergencies. But I never asked, never made them feel guilty, because I told myself I'm the strong one, the responsible one. I'll build my own life. So I did. Law school, clerkship, bar exam on my first try. I was appointed family court judge at 29, the youngest in my state. And yet, at every holiday dinner, I was still just the older sister without a husband, the woman married to her career, the one who overthinks everything. Rachel, on the other hand, could crash a rental car during Coachella weekend, post about it on Instagram, and somehow gain more followers. When she launched a vegan candle line that exploded literally, due to a manufacturing issue, Mom still called it a bold experiment. She borrowed money from me more times than I can count. Sometimes for rent, sometimes for investments, always with a promise to pay me back. She never did. She flirted with men I dated. She accidentally wore the same dress as me to a gala, twice. But the moment that truly cracked something open inside me, it happened 5 years ago. Rachel had a baby, a beautiful little girl named Lily, father unknown, or at least, unacknowledged. She was 25. Living in a shared apartment in Brooklyn, working part-time, blogging about self-healing while asking me to cover her prenatal vitamins. Despite everything, I was there. I drove her to appointments, sat by her hospital bed, held her daughter while she screamed through contractions, and when Lily came home, it was my apartment she stayed in, not hers. Because Rachel, true to form, needed a break to go find herself again, which translated into 2 months in Tulum with a bartender named Austin. Lily got sick one weekend, badly. A stomach virus turned into severe dehydration, which turned into a hospital emergency. I stayed with her the whole time, sleeping upright in a vinyl chair under fluorescent lights, signing every form because Rachel couldn't be reached. Somewhere in the chaos, I picked up a bacterial infection, maybe from the hospital, maybe from sheer exhaustion. I nearly died. Sepsis, Organ stress, an emergency hysterectomy that saved my life but erased my chance of ever carrying a child. Rachel returned a week later with braids and a suntan. She cried when she found out, said she didn't know, said, "That's awful, Jess." But a month later, she asked me to babysit while she went to a music festival. And I said yes, because some twisted part of me still believed that's what sisters do. Back at that engagement dinner, I saw her eye me over her champagne flute and smirk. She knew what she was doing. And when she joked again about me not having kids, not being able to understand real parenting, I knew. She hadn't just forgotten my sacrifice. She'd weaponized it. That's when the symbol clicked into place for me, the engagement ring. It was enormous, gaudy, even, a billboard of worth. She kept waving it around, tilting it toward every candle and camera flash. And I realized Rachel always got the prize, the biggest ring, the loudest applause, the benefit of every doubt, while I got invisible. Until Marcus, the fiancé, the only person at that table who seemed to see through her. When he stood up and called me out, asked me to tell the truth about what happened 5 years ago, he didn't do it to embarrass me. He did it because he knew. Somehow. He knew. But how? Had Rachel slipped up? Had she confessed something in a fit of drunken cruelty? Or had Marcus, smart and perceptive, simply put the pieces together, noticed the way she avoided responsibility, the way I flinched when she spoke? Either way, he lit the fuse. And now, the clock was ticking. I sat in that chair, napkin clenched in my fist, stomach churning like court mourning on a high-profile custody case. Every eye was on me. Every word I'd rehearsed in my head through therapy. Sleepless nights, whispered prayers suddenly vanished. And still, something inside me stirred. Not rage, not revenge. Something deeper. A quiet voice that said, "This is your moment." Because if I didn't speak now, if I let this pass, then Rachel would win again. But before I could open my mouth, my mother's voice broke the silence. "Well," she said briskly, raising her wine glass, "Jessica's always had a flair for the dramatic. I'm sure it's nothing." That did it. That single, flippant dismissal from the woman who raised me cracked something clean in half. My mother's voice was light, measured, practiced, the same voice she used when dismissing a neighbor's divorce as predictable, or brushing off my childhood asthma as just nerves. "Well," she said, swirling the Merlot in her glass, "Jessica's always had a flair for the dramatic. I'm sure it's nothing." Nothing. That word clanged in my chest, like a dropped gavel in an empty courtroom. 5 years, multiple surgeries, 3 frozen embryo cycles that led nowhere, 2 relationships that ended the moment I whispered I can't have kids. And now, in front of 50 people, family, friends, strangers, I was reduced to nothing. I stood up. Not like in the movies, no dramatic toss of the napkin or glass-shattering silence. It was slow, quiet, like peeling off a mask I hadn't realized I'd worn for too long. "I do have something to say," I said. Rachel stiffened. Marcus leaned back, his arms crossed, unreadable. My father's eyes darted between us like a referee about to call a technical foul. My mother gave a tight smile that said, "Don't embarrass us." But it was too late for all of them. "I wasn't going to share this," I began, voice steady, because it's not a story that makes me look good, or anyone, really, but maybe that's the point. I let my eyes scan the room, not dramatically, but deliberately. There were whispers now, shuffling. Even the servers had paused near the cake table. I took a breath. 5 years ago, I said. When Rachel left town when she needed space, her daughter Lily stayed with me, and she got very sick. It started with vomiting, then fever, then she stopped responding. I could see the flickers people remembering. Rachel had posted something back then. A vague "pray for us" caption under a black and white hospital photo. No one asked questions. I took Lily to the ER. I continued, and stayed with her every second. Her mother couldn't be reached. I signed the forms. I held her hand. And somewhere in that process, I contracted an infection that nearly killed me. A ripple moved through the guests like wind through dry leaves. Rachel opened her mouth, but I didn't stop. They saved me, but not all of me. I lost my ability to have children, permanently, at 27. For a second, everything was quiet. No forks clinking, no whispering. And then, my mother exhaled sharply. "Jessica, that's a private matter." "No, Mom," I said, more firmly. "It was private when you ignored it. When Rachel mocked me tonight for not being a mother. That was public. That was a choice." Rachel turned red. "I didn't mean it like that." "You never do," I said. "You never mean it, but you always say it." She scoffed. "Oh, please, Jess. You act like I forced you to do any of that. I didn't ask you to become Mother Teresa." "No," I said. "You didn't. You just disappeared and assumed I'd clean it up." People were shifting in their seats now. Uncomfortable. Not because I was angry because I wasn't, but because I was true. And the truth, served cold at a dinner party, is always hard to swallow. Marcus finally spoke. His voice was low, even. "I found her medical records a few weeks ago. When I asked Rachel why Lily's emergency contact wasn't her own mother, but Jessica." Gasps. One of Rachel's bridesmaids actually dropped her phone. Rachel went still. "You, what?" "I wanted to understand," Marcus said, turning to her. "You told me you were a single mother, doing it all on your own, that you survived with no help." "I did," Rachel hissed. "I mean, mostly." Marcus cut her off. "Jessica paid your rent. She attended Lily's parent-teacher meetings. She showed up. You didn't." The silence now was thick. I could hear someone coughing behind me, like trying to clear the tension from their lungs. The symbol, the ring, flashed again in my mind. Rachel's hand was trembling now. And that diamond, it sparkled like it was mocking me. I'd never been proposed to, never held out my hand for applause or a lifetime promise, because I was always too busy holding everyone else's mess. And then my father, stoic, composed, silent this whole time, finally spoke. His voice cracked more than I expected. "I didn't know," he said quietly, looking at me. "I swear to God, Jessica, I didn't know it was that serious." I met his eyes, not with resentment, not even with sadness, just fatigue. "You didn't want to know," I said. "You all saw what you wanted to see. Rachel as the phoenix, the dreamer, me as the cold one, the judge, the spinster. But it was easier that way, wasn't it?" Someone clapped. I turned, startled. It was Aunt Valerie, my mother's older sister, a woman known for her silence and pearls. She stood. "About time someone said it." She muttered, "Your daughter is more than Rachel's unpaid babysitter." "Susan." My mother blinked. "Valerie, please." But others followed. Murmurs, nods. Suddenly, the golden girl glow around Rachel started to dim. Rachel stood now, hands shaking. "You know what, fine. Take your spotlight. You always wanted it anyway." "That's not true," I said. "Isn't it?" she snapped. "You love being right. You love making everything about you." "No," I said calmly. "I just got tired of being wronged." And just when I thought it was over, Marcus turned to Rachel and said, "We need to talk, privately, now." Her face drained of color, because that was not a fiancé's tone. That was a verdict. I sat down, finally. Someone handed me water, someone else an old neighbor. I think squeezed my shoulder. The tide had turned. But the price, it hadn't even started collecting yet. Because once a secret is out, you can't unring that bell. What does Marcus want to confront Rachel about in private? and what else might be unraveling beneath the surface, Marcus and Rachel disappeared into the house through the sliding glass doors, past the half-eaten cake, and out of sight. I stayed seated, not because I wanted to. My legs felt electric, every nerve humming like they were still waiting for the next attack, but because I knew if I stood again, if I followed them, it would make me look desperate, vindictive. No, this wasn't about vengeance. It was about equilibrium. People started whispering. Some openly stared. A few approached to offer support cloaked in vague words. Brave. Necessary. Finally. But their eyes were rubbernecking, still full of spectacle. The truth I had laid bare had become entertainment. And I hated that. I needed air. I grabbed my coat, slipped past the servers, and stepped outside onto the narrow stone path that curved behind the Miller house. I could still hear muffled voices through the windows, someone laughing awkwardly, another person asking if dessert was still happening. It all felt grotesque, artificial, like I had exposed my open wound in a theater, and now the curtain had closed, but I was still bleeding backstage. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Can we talk alone?" I stared at it for a long beat, thumb hovering. Then I typed 10 minutes, "Meet me at the garden shed." There was an old shed my father had converted years ago into a wine cellar. It sat at the edge of the property, surrounded by overgrown ivy and wildflowers that Rachel once said made it look like a fairy house for alcoholics. I walked toward it now, heart pounding with something I didn't yet have words for. He was already there when I arrived, leaning against the doorframe. He looked up when he saw me, face tired, jaw clenched, like someone who'd just been punched with 1,000 unsaid things. "I'm sorry," he said first. Not, "I didn't mean for this to happen." Not, "I didn't think she'd react that way." Just, "I'm sorry." I nodded. Me too, for waiting this long. Marcus sighed, folding his arms across his chest. I had suspicions for a while, about Rachel, about how curated everything felt. But it wasn't until I saw the hospital forms that I realized she'd lied about who really took care of Lily. I swallowed. "How'd you find them?" She left them in a file, carelessly, like she thought I wouldn't read past the first page. "Jessica. She told me you were an aunt who barely visited, that she raised Lily alone, and you judged her from afar." I shook my head. No. I raised her daughter when Rachel ran. I lost everything trying to keep that baby safe. "I know now," he said, but I didn't want to confront her until I was sure. I stepped closer. "And are you sure now?" Marcus met my eyes. "I am." And then he said something I didn't expect. "I'm calling off the engagement." My breath caught. Not because I disagreed, but because the finality in his voice, the weight of it, made the whole night real in a new way. I believed in her. He continued, "Even when she was messy, dramatic, hard to understand. I told myself that's just her way of surviving a family that demanded perfection." I gave a bitter laugh. Perfection, Rachel never had to be perfect. She just had to be loud enough that no one noticed anything else. He nodded. "Yeah, that's what I realized." Then came the twist. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, not the engagement ring, but something else. Inside was a thin gold chain. On it, a locket. "I bought this for Lily. I was planning to give it to her at the wedding." He opened it. On one side, a tiny photo of Rachel and Lily. On the other, me, holding Lily as a baby, taken at the hospital. "I found that picture online," he said, from a blog post Rachel had written and then deleted. She captioned it, "My sister, the real MVP." But she buried it, like the truth was too inconvenient. I looked down at the locket, fingers trembling. "I don't want her to forget who actually showed up," Marcus said, "even if her mother never tells her." The locket was the second symbol of the story, After the ring, Rachel's symbol of status. Illusion, this was the counterweight. Small, honest, weightless in gold, but heavy with truth. I took it. Not because I wanted it, but because someone had finally handed me something that acknowledged the cost of everything I'd lost. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. "There's one more thing." My heart braced. "I think you should file for custody." I blinked. "What?" "Rachel's unstable. She's already told me she plans to move Lily to LA next year. To build her brand. She wants to turn Lily into a mini influencer. I can't stop her legally, but you might be able to." I froze. Custody. The words sounded like war, like family court, subpoenas, evaluations, like trauma and healing bleeding into each other. "I'm not her mother," I said. "But you were," Marcus replied, "and in the ways that mattered, you still are." I walked away in silence. Not because I disagreed, but because I was suddenly staring at a future I hadn't let myself imagine. One where I fought back. Not just with words, but with action, strategy, law. My world. That night. Long after the guests had left and the champagne had gone flat, I sat in my car in the driveway and opened a blank note on my phone. At the top, I wrote "Plan petition for joint custody of Lily Miller." Underneath, Step 1. Gather medical records. Step 2. Document financial support over 5 years. Step 3. Speak with child therapist, re-stability. Step 4. Secure witness statements from friends/neighbors. Step 5. File notice of intent to pursue temporary guardianship. Each bullet point was a heartbeat, a promise, a reckoning. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone watching her life unravel. I felt like the one holding the thread. Will Jessica go through with the custody case? And how will Rachel retaliate when she realizes the truth is only the beginning? A week after the engagement, dinner imploded. I filed my notice of intent. Just typing those words felt surreal. The same courtroom language I'd used for years on others, was now aimed at my own blood. Rachel Miller, my sister, the mother of the child I'd nearly died protecting. And now, the subject of a legal petition that would shatter every illusion our family had clung to. Let me be clear, I didn't do it to punish her. I did it because I could no longer trust her to protect Lily. Not with what I knew, not with what I'd seen. Not after the messages Marcus forwarded me screenshots of Rachel in group chats, joking about how she planned to monetize Lily's natural cuteness on social media. Before the chubby cheeks disappear. Not after the receipt he found from a Hollywood momager consultant, where Rachel had paid $3,000 for a branding session, without ever mentioning it to anyone. My attorney was a former colleague, Jasmine Chen. Brilliant, strategic, and quietly ferocious. We met at her downtown office the morning after the filing. "You know this isn't going to be clean," she said, flipping through the folder of affidavits I'd compiled, medical records, texts, a statement from Lily's preschool teacher. "She's going to paint you as bitter, controlling, infertile, and jealous. That's the playbook." "I know," I said. "And the court isn't always kind to aunts." "I'm not just an aunt," I said. "I was her legal guardian for over 8 months. Rachel was in another country." Jasmine smiled. "Then we anchor everything in that." What followed were the hardest 3 weeks of my life. Worse than law school, worse than the sepsis, worse than the courtroom stairs when I'd have to terminate someone's parental rights. Because now the looks were from people I loved. My mother called me a traitor. My father left a voicemail that began with, "You've always been so cold, Jessica," and ended with him hanging up mid-sentence. Rachel, of course, exploded, in every direction. She posted vague Instagram stories. "Some people will stab you and then act wounded when you bleed. Family court is the last refuge of the bitter and barren." The comments rolled in like waves of poison. You deserve better. Girl, stay strong, mama. Jealous sisters are the worst. And every time I opened the app, I reminded myself this isn't about me. This is about Lily. Then came the first retaliation. Rachel filed a counterclaim that I was mentally unstable, that I'd once screamed at Lily in a fit of rage, that I had hoarding tendencies and paranoia issues. I should have laughed. Instead, I cried. Because the only reason she knew any of those phrases was from my therapy journals, ones she'd read without permission years ago when she stayed over and snooped through my desk. Jasmine was ready. She subpoenaed Rachel's travel records, her bank statements, her social media archives. The picture they painted a woman who loved her daughter. Yes, but sporadically, loudly, publicly, but not consistently. Not the way Lily needed. Not the way I had been. Then came the hearing. It wasn't glamorous. No jury, no grand speeches, just a small courtroom with beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the heavy silence that comes before hard truths. Rachel wore white. Of course she did. A symbol of innocence, redemption, the struggling single mother against the cold-hearted career woman. But the Judge Elaine Morales wasn't buying it. She listened, took notes, asked precise, sharp questions. And when Rachel's lawyer tried to argue that I had ulterior motives, Judge Morales interrupted. Miss Miller, she said to Rachel, can you provide a single month, just one, since your daughter was born, when you solely covered her food, shelter, and health expenses? Rachel blinked, then stammered, then said something about emotional support. Judge Morales didn't flinch. She turned to me. Ms. Jessica Miller, would you be prepared to provide full documentation of your support since 2018? Yes, Your Honor, I said, handing over a binder I'd spent 12 nights compiling. Receipts, emails, daycare invoices, grocery lists, even the pediatrician's thank you note, addressed to me. And then came the twist. It wasn't from me. It was from the third character, Lily's teacher, Ms. Dorsey, a kind woman in her 50s who took the stand as a character witness. I've taught Lily since she was 3, she said, and when Jessica picks her up, Lily's calm, centered, happy. When Rachel comes, she's overstimulated, sometimes scared. Rachel's lawyer objected. Judge Morales overruled. Miss Dorsey continued. I once asked Lily what her mommy did. She said, my mommy yells a lot and flies on airplanes. My other mommy reads to me when I'm sick. That sentence. It was the knife. The silent, final, brutal truth. Court adjourned. Deliberation was postponed for 72 hours. And in those 3 days, the storm came in full. Rachel messaged me a voice memo, 4 minutes of screaming, sobbing, accusations that I was stealing her life. My mother emailed me an ultimatum: withdraw this petition or never speak to us again. Even my cousin Daniel, once my ally, texted, you could have handled this privately. I ignored them all, because I knew what was coming. And what came was a ruling. On a rainy Thursday morning, I stood beside Jasmine as Judge Morales read her decision aloud. Joint temporary custody granted to Ms. Jessica Miller. Visitation schedule to be supervised, pending psychological evaluation of Ms. Rachel Miller. Rachel cried in court, not because she lost, because it wasn't over. As we left the building, Jasmine turned to me and asked, you ready for the real war? I didn't answer, because standing in the courthouse doorway, I saw Lily waiting beside Marcus, coloring in a book, oblivious to the hurricane her family had become. And I knew the real war wasn't with Rachel, it was with myself. With guilt, with fear, with the cost of choosing truth over peace, with temporary custody granted. What sacrifices will Jessica have to make to protect Lily? And how far will Rachel go to take her back for the first time in years? My mornings began with cereal and crayons. Lily preferred her Cheerios dry. No milk. She hated bananas, but loved blueberries if they were cut in half. Every morning, she sat at my kitchen table in a pink plastic booster seat, kicking her heels against the wooden legs and humming whatever tune had crawled into her head that day. It was chaos. It was exhausting. It was everything I didn't know I'd needed. The court granted me temporary joint custody with physical care 3 days a week. Rachel was allowed supervised visits on weekends. And yet, she didn't show up. Not the first weekend, not the second. Her lawyer claimed she was too emotionally unstable to engage and needed mental health accommodations. It sounded like a smart legal move. But to Lily, it felt like abandonment. "Why doesn't Mommy come get me anymore?" she asked one night, curled beside me on the couch. I froze. My mouth went dry. "She's working through some things," I said carefully. "But she loves you. A lot." Lily looked at me, eyes wide. "Do you love me more?" I paused, then kissed her forehead. "I love you always. That's what matters." But love didn't solve everything. Love didn't stop the letters. Anonymous envelopes started arriving at my house, no return address. Inside were photos of my apartment, my office, my car. One note said, "You want war. Let's go." I changed all my locks, filed a police report, installed security cameras. Still, nothing could prepare me for the morning I opened my front door and found my windshield smashed with a single red stiletto heel left on the hood. Rachel had gone nuclear. Meanwhile, our parents refused to speak to me. My mother blocked my number. My father sent one terse email: "Whatever you think you're protecting, it's not worth destroying your sister." Even my Uncle Ray, the one who always sent me birthday cards, left a voicemail that said, "You've embarrassed the whole family. I hope you're proud." I wasn't proud. I wasn't ashamed either. Just tired. So damn tired. And through it all, Marcus stayed. He didn't try to fix things. He didn't pretend to understand all of it. He just showed up. Groceries, carpool, even bedtime stories when I was too burned out to function. Lily clung to him like ivy. And some nights, when I passed her door and heard them laughing at the same page of green eggs and ham, I wondered quietly, desperately, what it would have been like if life had bent another way, if I'd met him first. But then I'd remind myself, love isn't always meant to be ours. Sometimes, it's just meant to rescue. The second twist came without warning. Late Friday afternoon, I got a call from Jasmine. Her voice was clipped, alert. "Jessica, Rachel's lawyer filed an emergency motion." "What kind of motion?" "She's demanding full custody, claims you've been manipulating Lily against her, and she has recordings." My blood ran cold. "What kind of recordings?" I whispered. "Voice memos. Rachel says Lily made them, saying she's scared of you, that you yell at her, lock her in her room." "That's a lie," I shouted. She's twisting everything." "I believe you," Jasmine said, "but the court will need proof." We scrambled, pulled security camera footage, text messages, teacher statements, and then I remembered something. Lily's drawings. She'd been obsessed with drawing her days, scenes, little comic strips on printer paper with stick figures and speech bubbles. I gathered dozens of them from the fridge, from drawers, from under the couch. One showed me brushing her hair. The bubble read, "Hold still, love bug." Another was Marcus holding a book. "Want one more page." And one showed Rachel, frowning, in sunglasses, holding a phone, a bubble that read, "Just 1 sec. Sweetie, I'm live." The hearing was brutal. Rachel wore all black this time. Her voice trembled. Her makeup was immaculate. She sobbed on cue, claimed I'd turned Lily into a pawn. "She used to love me," Rachel cried. "Now she won't even hug me." I said nothing. "Let Jasmine handle it." She played Lily's teacher's testimony, presented the drawings, the timestamps, the records. Then Marcus stood, voluntarily. He shared everything: the influencer scheme, the travel abandonment, the threats. Rachel looked at him like he'd just stabbed her in the chest. And then, the final blow. Jasmine handed the judge a small pink backpack. Inside the locket, that tiny gold locket Marcus had once shown me, now worn, slightly scratched, but open to the same photo inside me and Lily. Judge Morales opened it, studied the image, and finally said, "Children don't fake consistency. They absorb it. This speaks more than testimony ever could." I won. Full temporary custody granted. Rachel's rights were suspended, pending psychiatric evaluation. But I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I walked out holding Lily's hand, her backpack slung over my shoulder, her tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb. Outside, the air was bright and sharp, early fall. Lily looked up at me and asked, "Can we get pancakes?" I nodded, with blueberries. Cut in half. I smiled, always. As we drove away, I saw Rachel through the courtroom glass, still seated, still sobbing, alone. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry at her. Just done. But later that night, while tucking Lily into bed, a knock came at the door. Not loud. 3 sharp raps. I opened it slowly, and there stood my father, face pale, eyes bloodshot. He didn't speak at first. Then he whispered, "I found something. You need to see it." What did Jessica's father discover? And could it change everything Jessica thought she knew about the past? My father stood in the doorway like a ghost pulled from another timeline. His hands trembled, lips pressed into a thin line. For a second, I saw him as he used to be: tall, formidable, always smelling like aftershave and black coffee. Now he looked aged and something else: afraid. He didn't ask to come in. I stepped aside silently. Once inside, he lowered himself into the armchair in the corner of my living room, the one I used to nap in after surgeries when Lily was teething. He clutched a manila envelope to his chest like it might combust if he let go. Finally, he spoke. "I found these in your mother's storage unit. She kept them. After all this time." He handed me the envelope. My name was scribbled on the front, and Rachel's handwriting sharp, fast, chaotic. I opened it slowly. Inside were 6 handwritten letters, some dated as far back as 2019. They were from me. To Rachel. I didn't even remember writing most of them. The first was from the hospital, post-surgery, when I could barely hold a pen. "Rachel, I begged you to come home. I didn't do this to shame you. I did it because she needed someone, and that someone should have been you. I love you, but I'm breaking. Please, for Lily's sake, come back." Another was written during Lily's 2nd birthday. Rachel hadn't called that day. We made a cake. Lily cried when she blew out the candles. I think she thought it meant you were coming. The final one. Unsent, never even folded. It simply read, "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try." I did, and it cost me everything. Tears blurred the words. I looked up at my father. "She kept these," he whispered. "She lied. Said you never reached out, that you pushed her away. That's why we took her side." I nodded, slowly, like something inside me was cracking, but gently this time, like an old wound finally draining. "I want to apologize," he continued, "not just for the last few months, for the years, for believing the version that made the least sense." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a photo. Me, in a hospital gown, holding Lily, swaddled. I looked pale, exhausted, but my eyes, they were wild with something raw and bright. "I didn't understand what that meant then," he said, But I do now. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he asked, "What happens next?" I didn't answer at first. Instead, I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out Lily's newest drawing, one she made yesterday. It showed our house, me, her, a cat we didn't own yet, but she swore was coming. At the bottom, she'd written, "Me and my mom, happy." What happens next? Well, Lily and I keep going. I still make her cut up blueberries. We adopted that cat, she named him Justice, which felt on the nose, but perfect. Marcus. He moved across town. He still visits. Never tries to be more than what we all agreed he could be, the man who helped when no one else would. My parents, slowly, gently, are trying. They take Lily to the park. They send birthday cards now with more than a signature. Rachel. I haven't seen her since the final ruling. Her parental rights weren't terminated, but she declined visitation, moved to Los Angeles, started a podcast. It's called Undoing the Narrative. Every now and then, someone sends me clips. I never listen. Because her story was never the one I needed to hear. Mine was. If you're still watching, if you've come this far, thank you. Because maybe your story doesn't look like mine. Maybe it's quieter. Maybe it hasn't exploded yet. But I'll tell you what I learned. Family isn't DNA. It's who shows up. It's who holds your hair back at 3 a.m., who memorizes your grocery list, who cuts the blueberries in half because you once said, "Whole ones feel too big." It's not always clean. It's not always fair. But sometimes when you fight hard enough, it's yours. So if you've ever been called bitter, selfish, dramatic, if you've ever been punished for telling the truth, know this. Your story is still valid. Your voice still matters. And even if no one claps when you stand up, stand anyway. If you connected with my story, like this video, comment "I stand." Subscribe if you believe truth matters more than appearances. Because the world doesn't change when we protect comfort. It changes when we protect each other.